All right, let's dive into the brand new U.S. AI Action Plan. Now, this isn't just another government document. This is a blueprint for how America plans to, and I'm using its own words here, win the race for the future of artificial intelligence. And believe me, it does not waste any time making that crystal clear.
There it is, the very first sentence. It sets this incredibly high-stakes competitive tone. It's not about collaboration. It's not even just about progress. It's about dominance. And that one line, well, that's the lens you got to see this whole 30-page document, and it's 100+ action items through.
Okay, so here's the game plan for this explainer. First, we'll talk about this idea of America's AI race. Then, we're going to walk through the plan's 3 big pillars: cranking up innovation, building out the infrastructure, and leading the world. And to wrap it all up, we'll look at a huge geopolitical consequence of all this, something people are starting to call the Silicon Curtain.
So let's start with the 30,000-foot view. This plan is being sold as the official playbook for America to win the race. But you have to ask, right? A race against who, exactly? And who really benefits when it's all said and done? The plan, it turns out, gives some pretty direct answers. And this is no small thing. We are talking about 103 specific policy actions. This is not some vague mission statement. It's a really detailed, government-wide strategy that's designed to impact every single piece of the AI puzzle.
The entire strategy is built on these 3 pillars, and each one is meant to build on the last. The logic is actually pretty simple. First, you accelerate innovation to create the most powerful AI systems. Second, you build the physical infrastructure to actually run it all. And third, you use all that power to lead the world. So, let's dig into that first pillar.
This first part is laser-focused on one single goal: making sure the U.S. has the most powerful, most capable AI on the planet. It's a really aggressive push to fuel what the plan calls private sector-led innovation, basically clearing the runway for American companies to take off and dominate the field.
And the very first objective in the plan is, well, it's pretty telling. Before it talks about anything else, it calls for getting rid of onerous regulation and red tape. The language is so clear. From this perspective, rules are just a hindrance that need to be cleared out of the way for the sake of speed.
And this is where things get complicated. You see, on one hand, the plan says it wants to make sure AI protects things like free speech and American values. But then, one of its first concrete actions is to tell the official standards body, NIST, to strip out references to things like DEI and climate change from its AI risk guidelines. So you have to wonder, which values are we talking about here?
Now, the plan does give a big shout out to open source AI, which is great for researchers and startups. But, and this is a big but, there's a really sharp geostrategic play here too. By pushing American open source models, the goal is to get the whole world to use them. It's a way of embedding American technology and its underlying standards across the globe.
And then, buried in this pillar are a couple of things that just kind of make you go, huh. Like, the plan calls for looking into a massive project to sequence the DNA of all life on federal lands. And it also puts this heavy focus on creating rules for how to handle deepfakes in courtrooms. Both seem like surprisingly specific things to find in a national AI strategy.
Okay, so you want to build the world's most powerful AI. Fantastic. But how are you going to power the thing? That question brings us right to the second pillar. This is all about the physical stuff, the sheer energy, the massive data centers, and the manufacturing needed to fuel this race.
And on this front, the plan itself admits a pretty harsh reality. America's ability to generate energy has pretty much flatlined since the 1970s. You can see it right here. While the US stagnated, China's capacity just shot through the roof. For AI, which is incredibly power-hungry, that's a serious problem.
So how does the plan propose to fix this? Well, by building faster. The goal is to dramatically speed up the permit process for things like chip factories and data centers. And the method for doing that? The plan says it's by creating new exclusions under environmental policy and cutting back on regulations to get these projects moving.
What's really interesting here is that the plan doesn't just talk about software engineers and AI PhDs. It makes this incredibly down-to-earth point about the workforce. To actually build all this stuff, you're going to need thousands of electricians, HVAC pros, and other skilled workers. It's a practical admission that the AI race is also built on concrete, pipes, and wires. All right, let's move to the final pillar. This is where the plan zooms out and projects this whole domestic strategy onto the world stage. We're talking about diplomacy, setting international standards, and basically getting the world to line up behind America's vision for AI. And this creates a really tough spot for America's traditional allies, especially in Europe. The US plan calls regulation a hindrance, which is a direct shot at the EU's big new AI Act. The plan then pushes allies to adopt what it calls complementary US-style systems. It's effectively asking them to choose, side with America's deregulatory approach, or stick with their own laws. And here, the quiet part gets said out loud. The plan is brutally honest that a primary goal is to counter China's influence in the groups that set global tech standards. The stated goal is to promote American values and push back on what it calls authoritarianism in the debate over how AI should be governed. So, what does all this add up to? When you put it all together, this aggressive push for dominance, the dismissal of other ways of doing things, and this direct confrontation with China, you start to see the outlines of a new kind of world order taking shape. Some people have started calling this the Silicon Curtain, a clear echo of the Cold War's Iron Curtain. It describes this idea of a world that's splitting in two, technologically and ideologically. A world where countries are increasingly forced to choose, are you in the American tech ecosystem with its values and rules, or are you in China's? This plan suggests that staying neutral is going to get a lot harder.
And that leaves us with one final, unavoidable question. In a world that's being defined by a race for dominance, a world divided by a technological curtain, who gets to decide what safe AI actually means? Who decides which values get programmed in and which risks are worth taking? The U.S. AI Action Plan has given its answer. The big question now is how the rest of the world is going to respond.